Welcome, welcome everybody. We will give everyone a few seconds to get their audio all set up.
Hello,
before we
Dolores. How are
begin.
you?
Yeah, I recognize some friends here.
I'm good. How are you doing? How's everybody doing?
Really good, thank you.
Good.
Michael, Eric, nice to see you.
I'm just waiting for a Leica here. It looks like audio isn't quite connecting there, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and start from the top. A few housekeeping items to get through, of course, and hopefully everybody be all connected up in a second here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's another Ask Me Anything session with the Pragmatic Institute instructor. Up at the top here, of course, a reminder, this is an Ask Me Anything format, which means turn your cameras on if you're able to. We love to see you, and it certainly helps if we're talking to a face and not a square. And if you want to unmute and ask a question, that is certainly fine as well, or unmute and clarify a question that maybe you've already submitted. You can also submit your questions in the chat, send them either to the whole group, to everyone, or you can send them just to myself, Eddie Gordon, the host today. Either way is just fine. I'll keep an eye on the chat over there and toss them over to our instructor. And then, of course, I have to plug our Pragmatic alumni community. We're so proud of our new online community. It is now I would call it a bustling online community because there's lots of activity going on in there. Here is some feedback from the director of product and DevOps at Ultimate Software, who says it's a thriving community ready to help each other and offer perspectives and advice, as well as access to the many experts at Pragmatic Institute. It provides you with an alternate sounding board and a place to gain ideas from many people across all industries. So take advantage of that wonderful resource. Get more information on it at pragmaticinstitute.com/community. And with the housekeeping items out of the way, we get to introduce one of my favorite instructors here. I think I said that every time, but don't tell the others. Cindy Crozato is with us today, and she is a wealth of knowledge, and you will definitely come away from this session smarter for having heard her. How are you, Cindy?
I'm doing really well today. Well, happy Friday. Busy week of teaching, so nice to kind of end up hanging out with you guys.
Fantastic. We're so happy to have you here. And so happy to have, I see some returning audience members today. Welcome back once again. We've got some pre-submitted questions. And of course, if you've got questions as we go along, stick them over there in the chat. But I thought I would start today with this first question that we have from Shveta, who asks, what are some resources or case studies about go-to-market strategies and execution? I've been interviewing and my lack of experience doesn't seem to help me answer case studies questions, or AKA the go-to-market plan for various products. Can you help out Shveta here, Cindy?
Yes, I don't see Shveta on with us, but if she comes on, let's definitely give her a chance to kind of tell us more. But so case studies and go to market, they go together, but they're very different things, right? So let me, I think in an interview situation, you're probably getting somebody asking you to give you examples of what you've done around go to market, and maybe a case study has come up. Number one, I have to say, give our market class a plug here. Our market class, if you are an alum, Shveta, we teach all the key elements of what a go-to-market plan needs to include, really aimed at how to help you build confidence in the leaders within an organization. But that knowledge would certainly help you feel more confident answering questions in an interview as well. But let me kind of give just an example, a little bit of a generic example. We use case studies in our marketing tactics to really share and build confidence in a buying situation. And so, let's assume that, you're with a company that is focused on growing market share, getting new logos, new customers. If you're in a very competitive market, one of the things you learn about the buyers that you're probably targeting is that they're a little skeptical. They're not the first kind of pioneers we talk about that are going to get out there and buy a solution. And they want you to prove that it's really going to be safe for them. And so the case study or a success story, however we design it, is really aimed at helping provide that kind of an answer to those buyers somewhere along that buyer experience. And so if you are in an interview situation and you want to give an example of a case study, you might say that you have buyers that are engaging with your website, and after they get a little familiar with what your company is, you want to answer their specific questions about who else has been successful. And so that's where you would use a case study to convince them or show them that it's safe to do that. So it's a tool to build confidence in that buyer and get them to progress through that buyer experience. If you talk about case studies in that way, then I think you show that there's an even bigger understanding that you have about market driven. And so it kind of opens the door for additional questions where you can kind of showcase your market driven mindset. Okay. In our market class, we have kind of a case study that we go through in our launch class as well, that helps you see how tools like case studies can be real assets in forming strategies for being successful in the market. So welcome follow-up questions on that, but that's where I'll leave it for today.
Beautiful. And again, if you have a follow-up question, stick it in the chat and I will get to it. Our next question is going to come from Alaika. Welcome back, Alaika, returning audience member, and I happen to know brand new member of the PAC, the Pragmatic alumni community.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
I hope you're having fun over there too. Alaika, and hopefully we're saying your name right. Is it Alaika, Alika? Go ahead and correct me on that if I'm getting it wrong. But here is the question. I was noticing that the formula in the pricing class with regards to willingness to pay could use some further explanation or possible updates. Since you rarely know your competitor's price, I'm not sure I'm able to use this at my work. Any advice? And Alaika, of course, you're welcome to unmute and clarify any of the situation there for Cindy.
Yeah. Well, welcome. I do have a question for you, Alaika. Have you been to our price class?
Yes, I attended it.
Okay. All right.
And passed the exam, but that being said, the reason why I've taken 4 courses is because obviously I want to be able to turn around things. And so we came up with a pricing or a willingness to pay flow because the formula just wasn't working for us. You don't oftentimes know competitor pricing. And so the flow we came up with, you have an idea, you fill out a product canvas, then that product canvas, if it passes a toll gate, where it's solving urgent problems, pervasive, and you believe there's going to be client willingness to pay, then you actually put a pitch deck together of the idea, a short one, and then you go interview 3 to 4 friendlies and 1 evaluator. And then from that information, will it pass the next toll gate, which is, okay, they actually confirm that it is an urgent problem that's being solved and that there is some willingness to pay. That would make it past the toll gate. So it was beyond just, using a formula because you obviously need the feedback of clients in the market.
Right. I like everything you described. That sounds great. It's almost like you're using that market expertise and putting a little bit of a business proposal together to kind of get people on the same page with you. I think whenever you're talking to examples of your buyers and you talk about the impact solving a problem would be, you start to learn what they mean by value, what they think of, right?
Right.
And you know, is it efficiency? Is it, you know, productivity? Is it saving money? You start to get that kind of an understanding about what value is. And that is really important as you're sitting around the table trying to set a price as a starting point, right? So all of that, you're right, is going to kind of lead up to, is the value strong enough for them even to care about wanting to solve that problem, which is what you described. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, because you know, like a great example is telehealth a few years ago really wasn't an urgent business problem, so it didn't take off. But now telehealth is an urgent business problem, and you see it taking off because, you know, because of COVID. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's a great example how, again, is it urgent enough? And like you said, we're creating kind of a bank of questioning
Yeah.
and line of thinking so that we give our product managers some guidance to extract what the value may or may not be.
That's great. That you're making them real influencers in the company to be able to talk about that in meetings and represent that. That speaks really highly of the whole function and all the things you're doing to get that level of understanding. Now, when we talk about setting pricing, I have to agree with you that finding out competitors' pricing, especially in a mature B2B market, is really hard. And it's hard for everybody, but it's not impossible to get a starting point on it. And especially, we teach, when we teach value-based pricing, we tell you that pricing is never perfect. It is something that can change as the market changes. And, where's our starting point for wanting to set at that price? Did you try understanding competitors' price by talking to sales?
Yeah, I mean, so we do have them as an integral part, and they're at the table with us because, see, in order to do value-based pricing, we have to understand willingness to pay, right? And so, yeah, we have them at the table because we actually have a few use cases. But that being said, they're only one input, right? We are using the sheet from the pricing class to look at the key differentiators, just the key ones. So we're doing that. But we also are telling them they have to know what the second best options key differentiators are too, because you have to know your competitors' value in the marketplace to understand how we can position our value.
Yep. All of that is fantastic. Are you also trying to set an actual price point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because what happened is we went out of the gate for $10,000 for an insight dashboard. Market said, no way, Jose, we're not paying that, because we didn't back into it using these best practices. So now we're trying to go back and use these best practices. So what are your thoughts now that we went to the market with $10,000 and they're like, no thanks.
So you're telling me that they thought the market thought it was too high?
Yeah, they did.
All right. Well, you also know that lowering price, not necessarily a good idea. The starting point is to leverage all those discussions you just talked about in terms of what you know about value and try to justify that $10,000.
I see. Okay.
Can you do that? And so the first way to do that is to say, well, we know this is the differentiation we're bringing in it that our market doesn't have. We know that this is what those differentiators are going to do for you. And if you can get sales to be really confident that it's worth $10,000, then get one of your best salespeople to go pitch it and see if they can get it there.
I see. So you're saying try to figure out the differentiation before just lowering the price.
Yes, that's always where I would start.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with having the most expensive product in a market. But what you need to do inside your organization is make your salespeople believe it's worth $10,000.
Okay.
Right? And it sounds like from everything you've talked about, the discovery interviews you've talked about, understanding differentiation, understanding value, you have all the building blocks to be able to do a training class and show them why it's worth it. What's the value that they're actually going to get from this solution compared to the competitor? And isn't that worth $10,000 to you? That's the kind of pitch that I would do. Maybe do a little role play with those salespeople. What you're going to do as you get them out there, kind of continuing to try to sell that, is you're going to learn more about the market. Buyers will probably say, okay, I believe you, but there's one thing that they have that you don't that is really important to me. And that's just an example of what you might learn. And what are you going to do with that input, right? Does that give you some additional things to think about in a roadmap? And maybe that salesperson can represent that roadmap. Buy this now and you're going to get that in X number of months. There's another way to think about it before you say, we got to go back to the drawing board. And
okay, this is helpful. This is helpful that we didn't even think about just justifying the 10,000 and figuring out our differentiator and looking at the alternatives and second best option. Fantastic. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Cindy, I loved when you said there's nothing wrong with having the most expensive product in the field, right? I mean, there are plenty of examples we can think of as consumers where we buy the most expensive one because of its reputation, because of its productivity. But when you first said that, I thought, oh, well, you need to justify the price to your consumer. But what you actually said was you need to justify the price to your sales team. They need to believe that it is actually worth the price you're charging.
That's right.
Do you have any other advice on how you can help your sales team know and understand that it is actually worth that price as well?
Sure, that's great. Number one, and this is obvious, right? You got to switch the conversation from the features to problems. If you just switch the language with sales, you're on the same playing field because that's what they do when they talk to prospects. The other thing that I would do, kind of in tangent to this, pricing evolves. But if you have a systematic win-loss program and every quarter you're doing a few win and loss interviews, figure out what questions you could ask in those interviews that could help you with your pricing decisions. Maybe after a couple of quarters, come back to that win-loss data and see, are there any other things you've learned about why people buy your product that you could train sales on that could support that $10,000 price? Or are you learning, which is also true, that we have different buyers in our market that have different willingness to pay? There are some buyers that urgently need the problem solved and they'll pay the most. And there are some who have the problem, but are not necessarily that urgently trying to solve it, that won't pay that. They'll pay something less. Mm-hmm. And maybe you need to think about, understanding the characteristics of that buyer and training your sales team on how to recognize that and maybe offer a specific discount to get down to that different willingness to pay. Lots of strategies that you can do with this, but always start with building sales confidence.
Fantastic. What a cool discussion. Alika, thank you so much for the questions. And we are excited to hear the results. Get back to us. Let us know how it goes. I am going to toss you a question from Vanessa, Cindy. Vanessa asks, we are a recent startup working to find a new normal we didn't necessarily prepare for when we decided to take the plunge. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, what are some ways, like checks and balances, if you will, to ensure our marketing activities are aligned with our overall marketing strategy and goals? How can they make sure those are aligned?
Well, deja vu for me. Vanessa, is Vanessa with us? I'm not sure I saw Vanessa.
I don't see Vanessa on at the moment. I could be watching live on YouTube as well.
Okay, yeah, sure. So when you're in a startup, very fast paced, and we what you described, you know, a new normal is that we feel like we're a little disconnected, or how can we, we're moving so fast, how can we stay aligned? That's kind of what I feel like the environment that you're in, and how fun, right? That's what I think, you know, we learn the most. But number one, I would ask, you know, what is the business plan focus? You know, at some level, right? The board of directors, the venture capital that your CEO is talking to all the time, there is a focus that is more than just making money. The focus is about getting into a particular market or more than one market. And there are going to be some strategies around that that will guide the sales and marketing activity, as well as the technical direction of your product, platform, whatever it is. So if you understand that, then it's so much easier to align your marketing goals to that. And I'll have to say that continuously be mindful that the business plan focus could change in 6 months, and then come back and say, how does that change the goals that we need to support? So there's a little bit of a, you know, staying in touch with that business plan focus that would help answer, you know, getting alignment around your overall marketing strategy and goals. But, you know, if you are a Pragmatic alum, there are tools that we have that help you think this through. And the one that comes to mind here is, you know, a favorite one of mine called the Strategy Matrix. And the Strategy Matrix is a way for you to kind of drive alignment within your organization. It is specifically an alignment tool, but it helps you go beyond just understanding the goals of the business, but it helps you say for your product vision, your product strategy, the answers to 2 questions. Who in the market do you want to pursue? Is it going to be upselling current customers? Is it going to try to grab new customers, new potential customers? Or are we trying to go into a whole new market segment, which sometimes we definitely are in a startup. We're kind of trying a lot of new things. But the second question is, what do you want to build for them? And so, you know, if that's you, or if there are other roles in the company that are more focused on product road mapping, sit with them and try to understand and populate the strategy matrix and identify what the focus areas are for the product strategy to support that business plan. Now, if you do that and have that kind of a tool, it gives you even more insight to help you with aligning your market strategy and goals. And so you can create strategies for marketing that are specifically going to be focused on getting you to successfully pursuing those parts of your market. One last thought on that I would give you is that when you are aligning and creating those marketing goals, make sure that they have 3 things. All right. There's a metric, there's an amount, and there's a time frame. So a typical one that you probably would have would be creating revenue, right? And so perhaps an example for you around that would be your marketing plan saying we want to achieve $5 million in new revenue from X product that is in your product roadmap, and we want to deliver that in 18 months. So the metric there is new logos, new revenue. The amount is 5 million and the time frame is 18 months. And make sure a goal like that is aligned to the product strategy that you would describe on that strategy matrix, and also that both of those are aligned with the business plan. So that gives you not only things for having great executive conversations, but they need to help validate that for you so that you can take the steps you want to do in terms of executing around getting to those goals. I hope that made sense to you.
Made sense to me.
Okay,
Yes.
sounds good.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah.
And our Zoom audience, of course, if you want to ask any clarifying questions, stick them over in the Zoom and I will look at them right away. But next, I'm going to toss you a question from Rod. Okay. Rod asks, can you please tell me what the ultimate goal of a customer advisory board is? How do I best pitch this to my customers to become a part of it? And how can I best frame what's in it for them?
Okay. Well, let me just say that 29 years working in software is my own background in 9 different companies, and almost in every one, we had some board like this or group like this, but some more successful than others. So let me just say that at one time, the definition of a customer advisory board was that was the only place that we would actually get feedback to put in our roadmap and build our products on. Now that's 15 years ago that used to be the case. And so we're in a totally different world, which might be why you're asking this question. We get so much insight from so many different sources inside our organization as well as out in the market, but we still want to stay close to these people, these friends of the family that are really good customers, and they are not only informative, but they're very helpful in a lot of different ways. And so I think one of the ways we've reshaped this usually feature functionality oriented board to today is that, we identify very crisply how many seats that we're going to manage on that board. Any number, right? 20 was a typical number of people that I would allow and to be invited into this board. And then identify how many seats are going to go to certain types or demographics of customers in your customer base. For example, you could have 10 seats for representing one market. Let's say it was healthcare, and 10 seats on the board representing maybe financial technology. And so that you now have a little bit of a diverse mix. And when you look at customers, it's not just the people who want to be there. You might have to go recruit them into being part of a cohort. And it's because you want to use them in different ways. 3 key ones I can think of that are very common today are that we might not have individual users on our customer advisory board. Sometimes it's an executive that actually is interested in participating, and they want to participate not to learn how to use the product. They want to participate to help us close business, to help us to represent a real executive level reference for our organization. And maybe you have an executive inside your company that helps manage them, stay in touch with them. So we can ask them to have conversations with prospects that are pretty far along, the sales process, and maybe, a call from a customer in this way on our customer advisory board would push them over, give them more confidence. So that's a really common way to use them today. But the other way, another way here is to have them help us understand who to talk to and use them as a way to build a pipeline of who we go visit to do discovery interviews. Tapping into their networks and their peers and having them do a warm introduction. I'm assuming you've talked to everybody on your customer advisory board, so that where do you go from there? Can they give you other examples of user personas and buyer personas that you could continue to do your discovery interviews with? And maybe they go with you and help you do that, or maybe you're doing it on your own. And then of course that third way, that traditional way, is getting them to be advocates in communities, participating in their community of choice, their social media channel of choice, and representing the confidence they have in your company by answering questions for other people. So, I would always, with every customer advisory board, I would always do a survey annually from them and capture their feedback and share it inside the organization. I would always give them a set of technology that we were adopting in the industry and ask them to kind of rank the order that they were approaching that. So we had a little heat map of that. These were real resources that helped build insight inside our organization to be market driven. Good question.
Cindy, go ahead.
This is Alika, because we're standing up a strategic advisory board too. We're calling it a strategic advisory council.
Yep.
And I've looked at the charter. One of the things though, it seems like a best practice to do is not to use them to represent your market, because they could be the noisy 20.
I was just going to ask that, Alika. Nice job.
So I've been trying to advise the leader that's standing this up that we've got to be very clear with them, the expectations, that they're not the sole input source of driving our roadmap decisions, because we need to go out and talk to the market beyond them.
You bet.
Your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. Which is why I think now that we have so many other sources that we can look at and access to the market through communities, through, through support teams that talk with them, sales teams. That's why the definition of what they do in a customer advisory board has changed so much to those things I was talking about. They're not just, in fact, the smallest thing they might do is provide, design feedback on something that we're building. They are the definition of the noisy 20%. All right, let's not mistake that at all. They are, and we can't listen to just them. That's why we want them to do other things across our business. And I bet there's even more creative ways that we could leverage them, but rotate them. I would have a 18-month window that they could participate, and roll in new companies so that you're always getting a fresh perspective, even if it's still within a particular part of your market.
And of course, Cindy, with the noisy 20%, sometimes just the pleasure of expressing their opinion is enough to get them to keep coming back and doing it. But
Yeah.
aside from that, what's in it for them? Why should they keep coming back and helping our business?
Because they look like an expert inside the organization. They look, they show innovation within the organizations. We are kind of tapping into, the kind of influence, if you like, that some companies have. And they like that. They grow individually within their own careers, but they also demonstrate that they are helping their companies be noticed. So that's mostly what's in it for them, either personally or company-wide.
Should we offer any other sort of perk or incentives to be on the board?
And, people go either way. I never had to. I never was asked. I didn't really want to go there. I don't really think it's personally a good idea, because you don't want anybody to feel like the feedback or what they're doing is tainted. You want it to be authentic.
Yeah.
And so I don't think most people do that today.
Wonderful. Good stuff. How about this one from Tiana, Cindy, who asks, what are some ways I can gain a deeper understanding of my target audience? And what are some ways I can most effectively reach them?
Okay. Well, I have to say, talk to them. Absolutely. We want to, we don't want to just read their emails and read their tickets. Okay. We need to go to those places and do what we call Nahito interviews. If you can put yourself in a position to observe them, that's just another way of talking to them, but maybe from a distance. And find those customers that your sales team found really open, that they were really wanting to team with a company that's going to kind of take them in that new direction, and maybe willing to be a reference and get a better price for it. Maybe those customers are ones that I would go to and see if they would let you, once they're installed on and using your product, maybe get on a Zoom and let you watch them using the product. Just observe, put yourself in that kind of a role as often as you can. I heard an interesting company that last year they were building technologies around airports. Lots of different technologies. And they would ask some of their employees to go into those airports and just sit in the area waiting where passengers sit to get on their flight, and just observe their potential customers or their users in action and take notes. Is there a way that you could do that? I think that's just another way of getting that kind of feedback. Talk to influencers in your market. These are those two places, right? The obvious Gartners and Forresters of the world, and ask them about about these, for additional data points, because their customers, their paying customers are probably the ones that would be examples of who you mean by target market. But don't forget, inside communities and channels, there are going to be those representatives, we call them advocates, that are going to be the ones that typically answer everybody else's question. Reach out to them. In kind of an idea exchange, they're the ones that have the star next to their name, because they usually are the ones that people go to ask specific questions. Can you find them? And are they an example of a target market? Or can they introduce you? The last thing I would say is that, we get a lot of feedback, that noisy 20%, from inside our organization, from sales and from support. But rather than waiting for them to tell you what they're hearing, why not go to them and just pick their brain, kind of turn the conversation around and you drive it. And maybe think not just sales reps, because that's probably where you're getting lots of feedback. In most companies we do, but think about those people that deliver services in your organization, those people who might install or help customers configure or set up a tool, or be dedicated account reps. Those folks have insight into customers that they work with, that they get to know pretty well, and maybe that can give you access to people to get interviews and talk more deeply about it. But certainly you're showing that those people in your organization that you have a lot of interest in learning a lot more about the kinds of things that your customers do for a living, not just working with your product. Those are my favorite places. And of course, the communities is a place where we could spend a whole lot of time. But wherever your customers go, that's where you should be focusing on those kinds of communities.
Cindy, I've got two questions here, and I know we've got some good resources for both of them, so I want to make sure to get these in here.
Sure.
The first one comes from Rory, who asks, no, sorry, this is the one from Beth. I'm sorry, Rory, I'll come back to yours again. Beth asks, do you have any good reads, books or articles you suggest for someone looking to get deeper into the product marketing field, especially those coming from engineering?
Oh, wow. Well, good for you, coming from engineering into product marketing. I'll have to tell you that number one on my list will be something around storytelling. Right? We got to be really good as product marketers in storytelling. And that's at the center of that is this technique called positioning, which we teach in our Foundations and Focus classes. But there's a great book called Obviously Awesome by April Dunford, which really helps crystallize what good storytelling is all about. And, as a product marketer, we tell stories inside our organization to build momentum, but we also tell stories in all of those, marketing strategies that we do. So that comes to mind first. I think that any time in product marketing, and especially because you're coming from a technical background, we're used to solving problems in a technical background. We're used to thinking in detail about solutions. And if you're switching to product marketing, that's a switch in mindset. So a book that is probably very different to what you might typically look at would be about this profile we call personas. And there's a great book by a gentleman by the name of Alan Cooper called The Inmates Are Running the Asylum. And it's a fun read because it's case studies that Alan Cooper did in different industries, where he talked about how understanding who you want to delight in your market really helps you understand problems before features. And so as somebody who's technical, this would be a really good illustration to you about how product marketing might be a little bit of a different thinking kind of a job. Okay, so those two off the top of my head.
Beautiful. And then Pam asked if you could repeat the book titles. For your reading convenience, producer Callie has posted the titles of those books in the chat, so you can find those. Thank you, Callie. Cindy, the other one is from Abigail. Abigail says, I am interviewing for a new product role and want to stand out from the other candidates. I've worked in a startup for the last year, but I'm looking to make a move to SME. What are some questions I can ask my potential employers to stand out from the crowd? Any that you remember from potential candidates that stood out to you in your career? She says, wish me luck. Abigail, we wish you luck. Now Cindy's going to give you more than luck.
You
She's going to
bet.
give you good advice.
You bet, you bet. Well, good for you. How exciting to be thinking about something new there. All right, what stands out for me? I'm going to tell you that about a dozen times in my career when I was in a position to interview somebody, what they did, can't say that always got the job, but they pulled out the pragmatic framework and they put it on the desk in the interview. And what they did was not only by doing that show me that they were market driven. And, I personally went to pragmatic training in 1986, very, very early on in my career. So, as they did that, they were showing me that there was a credential that they had that showed me that they were going to think more outside in than inside out. So that's one. But what it helps you do in a job interview is it helps you, when you look at a resume and you see kind of chronologically the companies somebody worked in and the industries, what doesn't leap out at you is some of the projects you worked on and how working on those projects applies to the job that you're trying to apply for. But if you can imagine putting the pragmatic framework in front of somebody that's interviewing you, even on a Zoom call, right? You hold it up. And you were able to say, on this project, I really worked on this box and this box, right? I was really using my skills here to understand why we win. And we were thinking about our market definition. And this is where I spent most of my time on this project. You get an idea. That is incredibly important. But if you do that, I know you're going to stand out from other candidates. And I would, along with that goes having at least one class at Pragmatic that you're certified in. Go to our foundations class if you haven't already. And make sure that badge is in your profile prominently, because you're already standing out from candidates when we do that. When we talk to executives that are actually actively hiring people, they tell us that they first filter interviews when they're looking for product management and product marketing roles by looking at some of the credentials and certificates that people have done on their own to kind of get that idea. Now, you asked me about questions. Depending on the kind of role that you're interviewing for, let's just say that you said moving into subject matter expertise. Let's say that's more of a product role, product management role. At the appropriate time, I would show your market-driven mindset by asking a question around what sources of market feedback do the product managers typically use today? Do the product managers do interviews on their own with parts of the market? Those are very direct, succinct questions that talk about a process that they either have in place or don't have in place. You might get an answer that says, that's why we're hiring this role, because we need to be doing something of those. But there you go, you've connected and shown your expertise, the way you think. And just remember that it doesn't matter how many interviews you've done personally. Maybe you've only sat in and been a buddy with somebody else. You know what needs to be done. You can represent that and do it in a new job. Okay. Hope that helps.
Cindy,
you.
I was mean to Rory a second ago, and I skipped his question. Do you have time for one more?
I do have time. Yes.
Let's do it. One more. And by the way, Abigail, let us know how it goes. Write us in. Let us know how the interviews go. Rory's question made me laugh a little bit, but there's a serious underlying issue here. Rory asked, who should be the one giving the final sign off in a product release? Our exec board is heavily involved in wanting to be in the know, but truthfully, they know next to nothing when it comes to our features and release plans. Thank you for their time. The nerve of these execs thinking that they're in charge of everything, right? What's the most productive working relationship here, Cindy?
Yeah. So well, immediately when I hear this, I just have to say the obvious, that if you're talking about who has the authority to say when something's ready to go, it's quality assurance. They are king when you're trying to build and deliver a solution to say it's ready to go. It's meeting that measurement. So, but I don't really think what you're talking about is about that. Okay. What it sounds to me like is that there's a need for clarity around roles and responsibilities. And I meet companies every week that say something similar to me, where there's debate around what are we putting in the next release? Executive, the highest paid individual, the loudest voice in the room is making the decisions. And you're sitting there feeling like that's not what you hear in the market, and you don't think we should be doing that. But how can you influence them? The way you're asking the question here, just getting the authority to make the call doesn't make you're going to make the right calls. So, it's what you really need is for the organization to clearly identify what is product management's job, and is part of that job knowing the market and prioritizing what the market needs fixed and kind of coming to the table to do that. That's what we teach. But if you get the organization to clarify what the responsibility is, then it's a little clearer when you get into these meetings about, who's going to have that final say. Remember always, if you're in this position, that you're going to get lots of opinions. They all come from different perspectives, and your job is to kind of synthesize all of that into an idea of a strategy, but you're not going to always win every time. Making room for some of those key things that executives need to see is an important bit of common sense that we have to weave into our strategy. But if you can be the one to build confidence that you're going to make the right decisions by showing that you represent the market over time, you're going to take on that role. They're going to kind of relinquish it. I don't know if you're in a startup or not, but let me just say that if you happen to be in a startup, the role of product manager is usually the founder and the CEO for a very long time. And sometimes when we're kind of that first product role coming into that kind of a company, we have to earn the role. We have to kind of win it from that CEO by showing that we know the market as well as they do. And you don't want to be out-marketed by, understanding market data. That's the secret to building confidence. And maybe something that would help would be one of my favorite magazines, the Pragmatic Marketer, The Issue. Folks, do we have a link here to The Issue, the softer side of product management?
I think we do. Kelly, do you have that handy?
There's a lot of great stuff in here that is really, in the end of the day, all about things that will help us build influence and build confidence in executives to do our job. Okay. But as I said at the beginning here, I would start with helping them clarify for you roles and responsibilities. And the gap analysis is a tool that will help you do that. We teach you that in Foundations.
Wonderful. There you go, Rory. We got you in there afterwards. Sorry about that. Cindy, as always, this has been fantastic. I come away smarter, and I'm sure that the rest of our audience does as well. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. We love it.
Thank you. Hope to see some of you in class one day.
Cool. That'll be fun. We'll have a reunion. We'll have an AMA reunion in class. Join us, of course, Thursday, September 3rd at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time for the next of our product chat series. And the 3rd of September, we will be joined by Mike Wolf. He's the VP of Product for Auto Trader and Kelly Blue Book. He's going to talk about how his organization used quick market-driven product development to help clients adapt to a new way of doing business, which we're all doing right now.
That sounds really good, Eddie.
New way to do business.
Yeah.
And if you can't wait that long, join us, of course, every Friday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time for the AMA series, Office Hours with the Pragmatic Institute instructor. We love to see you. We love seeing repeat audience members too. That's so fun. Feel like we're becoming friends. And until then, Stay safe and healthy. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. We will see you next time.
Thank you. Have a good
That's it
weekend.
now.